In 1971, an American Airlines plane had just taken off for a few minutes when a passenger sitting in the very last seat called the air hostess over and, smiling, handed her a note. That note contained only a few words, but it caused a stir across America. Who was that passenger? And why has the FBI never been able to find him, dead or alive, to this day? Forget about finding him. America's most powerful intelligence agency hasn't even been able to extract a single piece of information from that passenger in the last 50 years. Welcome once again to Discover TV Videos. This intriguing case began on November 24, 1971, at Portland Airport. A man, who at first glance appeared to be a businessman, booked a ticket from Portland to Seattle and headed straight for the plane. At that time, there were no strict security checks at airports in the US. No baggage checks were conducted, nor was identity verification required. The plane was a Northwest Orient Airlines Boeing 727, scheduled to reach Seattle from Portland in just 45 minutes. Wearing sunglasses and carrying a briefcase, the passenger boarded the plane and sat in his preferred seat, the very last row. He ordered a drink and lit a cigarette, which was still allowed on flights in the 1970s. At exactly 2:58 p.m., the flight took off. As soon as it was airborne, the man turned around and handed an envelope to the air hostess sitting nearby. Smiling, the air hostess, named Florence Schaffner, opened the note, and the ground beneath her seemed to vanish. It read, "I have a bomb and would like you to sit beside me." As soon as Florence sat down beside him, the man opened his briefcase, revealing 8 sticks of dynamite and a detonator. In short, the plane had been hijacked. The hijacker had 3 demands. He wanted $200,000 in cash before 5 p.m. He needed 2 parachutes. He demanded a refueling truck be ready at the airport. At the end of his demands, he indirectly told Florence that if there were any mistakes, he would detonate the bomb. Apart from the hijacker, there were 35 passengers on the plane who were completely unaware of what was happening at the back. Florence took the hijacker's demands to the cockpit and informed the captain. Another air hostess, Tina Mucklow, sat beside the hijacker, relaying messages between him and the pilot. This was the first ever plane hijacking in American history carried out for ransom. Because of this, local authorities and the FBI decided to comply with all of the hijacker's demands. Authorities knew that the hijacker wouldn't be able to escape far. The flight, which was supposed to land in Seattle in just 45 minutes, kept circling the airport for an hour and a half.
Meanwhile, the 35 passengers, unaware of the situation, were told that a technical issue was delaying the landing. During this time, Seattle National Bank prepared $10,020 bills with their serial numbers recorded, and a nearby skydiving club arranged to parachutes. At exactly 5:45 p.m., the plane landed. As promised, the hijacker was given a bag filled with money and 2 parachutes. The plane was also refueled. After getting what he wanted, the hijacker allowed the 35 passengers and 2 flight crew members to leave the plane. However, he instructed the pilots and 2 remaining flight crew members to stay. By this time, night had fallen and the plane took off once again. The hijacker gave specific instructions to the pilot through Tina Mucklow. He wanted the plane's landing gear and flaps to remain deployed, the altitude to stay at 10,000 feet, the speed to be kept at 320 kilometers per hour, the plane to fly directly to Mexico City. The pilot agreed to most of the demands, but due to fuel limitations, flying directly to Mexico City was not possible. So, the pilot suggested 2 refueling stops, and the hijacker agreed. Meanwhile, local and federal authorities sprang into action. Fighter jets were sent to follow the plane, but they couldn't maintain such a slow speed. As a result, they began circling around the plane instead. In the darkness of the night, while the plane was en route to its next destination, the hijacker told Tina to go into the cockpit where the pilots and flight attendant were. As she turned back to close the door, she saw him strapping something to his waist. After that, he opened the stairs of the plane and jumped out. What happened next has been a mystery for the past 50 years. 3 hours later, when the plane landed at the refueling location, investigators thoroughly searched it. But there was no trace of the hijacker. Neither his body nor his parachute was found. From that moment on, the hijacker disappeared without a trace, whether alive or dead. Who was this man, and how did he deceive all of America? This remains one of the FBI's longest-running unsolved cases. No one saw the hijacker jump from the plane, but the open stairway made it clear that he had jumped somewhere between Seattle and the refueling stop. The FBI searched the plane for evidence but found only his black tie, some cigarette butts, and one of the 2 parachutes he had taken. At the time, no one had a photograph of him. Based on passenger descriptions, authorities created a sketch of the hijacker. Before searching the drop zone, the FBI needed to determine the exact location where he had jumped. This wasn't difficult because the plane was on autopilot. The plane's speed and altitude were already recorded, and flight data revealed that the stairs were opened at exactly 8:10 p.m. Using this information, the FBI defined a search area of about 45 square kilometers, consisting of dense forests and mountains.
Search teams combed every inch of the area but found no trace of the hijacker, his briefcase, or the money. The area was so severely cold that many assumed the hijacker had died. But what happened next shocked the FBI. For the first time in American history, the FBI sought public help in solving a case. They released the hijacker's sketch and published the serial numbers of the stolen $20 bills in newspapers. A reward was offered for any information. Authorities believed that if the hijacker were alive, he would eventually spend the money somewhere. However, surprisingly, not a single bill from the ransom money ever resurfaced. But the mystery didn't end there. Nearly 9 years later, in 1980, an unexpected discovery was made. On the banks of the Columbia River, at a place called Tenabar, a child playing with his parents found 3 bundles of cash. These bills totaled $5,800 and were part of the ransom money. The child's parents took the money to the FBI. The serial numbers matched those from the hijacking. This was the first progress in the case in 9 years, but instead of solving it, it only deepened the mystery. The money was found 27 kilometers away from the estimated drop location. Originally, investigators believed the bills had been washed downstream from the drop zone. However, later analysis showed that the Columbia River flows in the opposite direction. This meant the money could not have naturally ended up at Tenabar. The FBI speculated that the hijacker or an accomplice had buried the cash there 3 years after the hijacking. Despite years of investigation, no definitive evidence was ever found. Many theories suggest that the hijacker was a trained military officer, as the parachute he used was a military model more difficult to operate than the commercial parachute he left behind. Apart from the $5,800 found in 1980, the remaining ransom money was never recovered. The only concrete evidence the FBI has today is his sketch, his ticket where he wrote his name, and the black tie he left behind. Even after 50 years, this case remains unsolved. The FBI still has all the details on its website, and the file remains open. Hopefully, you enjoyed this Discover TV video. Don't forget to like and share. Thank you for your love and support. See you in the next amazing video.